Hello, my name is Charles Bowman, and today, well, I'm delighted to host another exclusive interview on Off the Agenda with a British entrepreneur who has established his brand as a powerhouse in the world of consumer retail, starting his career as a musician, working with the likes of James Brown and Maxi Priest, and nominated for a Best Reggae Act MOBO Award in 1998. Then appearing on the BBC's Dragon's Den, where he secured a £50,000 investment and partnered up with business mogul Peter Jones. The brand he created sits amongst the likes of Heinz, Marmite, Coleman's and Hellman's, a condiment that is found in homes right across the UK. He's a man whose early years can be traced to the beautiful island of Jamaica, where he honed his passion for cooking with the support of his grandmother. Known to many as the Dragon Slayer and to some simply as Keith, he truly represents the best of Britain through business, entrepreneurship, culture and community. We know and we love him as Levi Roots. Levi, thank you. Thank you for joining me and us today. And it's an absolute delight to be able to meet with you. And I start by saying that I hope you're keeping safe, sane and well. Indeed, you're looking extremely well in front of me. But I ask, as indeed I ask everyone, how are you faring in these challenging times?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Charles. As you know, it's lockdown here, so we're all going to make do with what you've got. And I've got a little space here that I try to keep fit. So that's why maybe I'm looking a little bit buff. It's just the space in front of me that I utilize a lot.
Very good. Well, that's a positive start to our discussion. Thank you. And may I talk a little bit about your backdrop and how you're growing up, if I can put it that way. And you were born in Jamaica. You moved to the UK when you were aged 11. You were a remarkably successful musician, performing with stars such as James Brown and Maxi Priest. And I know you were a friend of Bob Marley too, and were nominated for a Best Reggae Act MOBO Award back in 1988. And then in 2006, you gained that widespread fame after appearing on Dragon's Den, where you gained funding for Reggae Reggae Sauce. Can you just perhaps tell us a little bit more about that journey from Jamaica through to the Dragon's Den?
Well, there's only sort of one word I can describe my life through, then of sort of concising nearly 40 years or so within music and food before I got to Dragon's Den, is that it was a romp. You know, it really was that, because it was a bit like going through good things and bad and failures and everything. And then eventually to use all that, including the failures that I went through, now to wrap that in a bubble and try to make some good of it. By the time I was 46, that's when I managed to be able to focus myself enough to be able to rack up all that, the shame and everything, you know, of failures, which normally before I discovered the true me, I would have thought that forget your failures, forget who you are before, don't use any of that. And I think my greatest part of my story is when I added those bits to my life and really be comfortable with who I was. By the time I was 46, and I was launching at the Notting Hill Carnival, just perhaps a year and a half before Dragon's Den, when I gave the sauce the name, and actually now we're saying that this is not about Levi the singer that did all the stuff that you mentioned, or even Levi the sauce man, which I now have become known amongst local people. This was now trying to put these two elements together and try to come up with something that was really different. And it was when I launched at the Carnival and I realized that I did have something special. I still had my music. I didn't have to sort of put that down.
Yep.
I brought that on board as well. And then the natural salesperson of my, and the natural knack that I had to sell something. I put that together, and that was the creation of it. But you know, everything that's in there came from the original teaching of my grandma, because I think those original sort of groundation that you get from someone like a grandma, when you grew up like I did, you know, the youngest of 6 children, back in Jamaica, having to be one of the last ones to come over because my parents couldn't do with a young child here when they were trying to work and trying to send for us. And then every year I would see one of my brothers leave. I leave and not really understanding why, until eventually it was my time to come to leave my grandma, who was mom, dad, and chief inspector and everything to me in one. And then having to be rooted up from her without having a choice, at the age of 11. To come to the UK to connect again with my brothers and sisters and my mom and dad, who I didn't really know. They left when I was quite young. So a pretty much tumultuous life then, but still having to wrap that all up together with my grandma's teaching, which became the center of what the sauce was about. And what I was trying to sell, that it wasn't just about me and my music. This is a story of a family story as well, too, of someone that inspired me greatly to be cooking like the way I did. And I wanted to wrap that all up together and put that in the bottle. And people at the carnival understood. And that gave me confidence now to take that Levi Roots on the road. Not the Levi of the failures and everything else, but the one that could identify with that. But we're still saying this is a new me. But I'm not going to hide, all that. I'm still that Rasta man from Brixton that had all the problems. That was me. But adding that new way of thinking to that and use those skills to sell the sauce, those natural flair from being on the street. But then the business side of it, to be able to be attracted to someone like a Peter Jones on Dragon's Den and to have the trust of one of the most astute business person in the country. That's the business side of you that's going to make that's going to have that attraction. And so putting those two together was how I managed to overcome the Dragon and I managed to sell Levi Roots and not just the sauce.
Well, that's a tremendous tale, Levi. You bring out lots of important things there, whether it's learning from mistakes, importance of family, mentorship, and much more. So as an official Dragon Slayer, you were awarded that £50,000. And I quote, Levi really stood out to many viewers due to his style and approach, which was 100% him, and yet also very much not the standard pitch. It swayed the public. How did you feel about appearing on the BBC's Dragon's Den? And do you think that sense of originality and authenticity were advantages or perhaps added challenges in winning over the Dragons?
Well, I gotta say, Sir Charles, I was perhaps the only one that really believed that I could do it. And in protection of my family and everyone else, because they were thinking well of me, because they knew that I had carved out a nice musical career, as you say, with my Mogo nomination and all that. I'd been doing well with the music. But here I was telling everyone, my family and friends, that I'm going to destroy that by taking a guitar onto a show about business and enterprise and sing a song. And of course, no one thought that was a great idea. They thought that, well, Levi, we will support you if you want to go and do a pitch, but do it conventionally, like how everybody else had been on Dragon's Den. But the thing is, I've never seen the show. So I didn't really get how serious what I was going to attempt to do. And all my family was trying to, tell me to look it up on YouTube and try to see what I was about to face. But I thought that if I did scare myself before I get there, I'm going to be half-beaten before I get there. So I refused completely to find out what Dragon's Den was about. And I had about a couple of weeks window from being spotted to being asked to go on the show. So it wasn't a long time to learn anything about how, terrible Duncan Bannatyne can be on the show, or how, Peter wears stripy socks and all the sort of stories that they hear. But I never knew any of that. So appearing on the show was because I felt I wanted to be me. I didn't want to go the route of leaving the guitar behind and go the conventional way of trying to pitch the sauce. I wanted to pitch Levi Roots. And I knew I was rubbish at the rest of this stuff, because as you probably saw on Dragon's Den, when the numbers became, I sweated like a pig and I got everything wrong, and I thought, the whole lot was going out the window. But I think that first bit coming out with the song and giving it the real me, that was the investment part. And even though the rest was rubbish, But the Dragons got it, that especially Peter, you know, he got the
Yeah,
fact that this was about the man and not just about the product. As good as the product was, but this is still about the man himself. So that's
fantastic.
how I managed to do it.
I love that. I love that a lot. And we can all reflect back on that wonderful program. It was tremendous and remarkable in its own originality. You mentioned Peter, and if we can, and you mentioned mentorship a little earlier. Can I quickly touch upon this? Obviously, key to realizing potential. And you had those two influential mentors from your time on Dragons Den. How important were they to your success? And do you think the story might have been different with perhaps different investors and different mentors?
I think mentorship is one of the most marvelous things when it comes to business and what you can pass on. Once you've learned something, what do you do with that knowledge? And it is about mentorship. Because for me personally, I've had monies in the past and a chance to get the business forward. Well, I don't think that's what I really needed, because I've had it and I've lost it, and it didn't really make it, didn't take me to where I wanted to get to. What I needed was learning to how to use that money if
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to get that. And I think that's what Mentor provides, because that's what Peter provided for me. Like I said, I've had the chances before, you know, but I didn't know how to use it. Is having someone like him around to be able to show you that said the most important thing for me wasn't about the money. Because I tell you a little thing here, my first order for Reggae Reggae Sauce. Imagine you're praying for something all your life, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm doing 67 bottles in my kitchen, 67 bottles. And within a week, Peter has called his friend Justin King, the chief of Sainsbury's, and said, "Did you see Levi at Dragon's Den?" Justin says, "Yes, I did. Bring Levi to see me." Within a few days, I was in front of Justin, and he made an order of 250,000 bottles. And I'm still making 67 bottles at home with my kids. So be careful what you pray for. But this is
It's
what you're...
extraordinary, that story, isn't it? Because I understand that Sainsbury's started off presuming it was only going to be whatever number it was per year.
Yeah.
And then you ended up doing that same amount per year in a week.
Yeah, well, we were outselling Heinz tomato ketchup, which is a ridiculous story, because can you really do that with a sauce from someone's kitchen in Brixton, outselling the biggest sauce in It happened within Sainsbury's and broke all records to do with condiments in there just within a few weeks. So just going back to the mentorship situation, that's what Mentor does, because for me, that's what Peter brought. And it wasn't about the money, because £50,000, which I got on Dragons Den, was a drop in the ocean compared to what I needed to fill that order, that first order.
Yeah.
So I had to have somebody astute enough for me to be able to think, what do we do? You know, you're there, you know, thinking that you want something, and then the Holy Grail is landed on your lap and said, you know, you can't go and I can't ring up Justin King and say, "Sorry, Justin, I can't deliver."
Yeah.
Give me 6 months or a year to do that. You got to think fast. And it's the mentorship that did that, because all we did was just a powwow, a sort of sit down with Peter and his friends and think, let's do the licensing deal. Levi's name is big enough for us to call any sauce company within the country and say, "Can you produce this Reggae Reggae sauce for us?" And that's what we did. And within a few weeks again, you know, we knocked on Justin King's door and said, "Here you are, sir, 250,000 bottles of Reggae Reggae sauce. Thank you very much." So mentorship is a mark, because I could have never thought of that in my position back then. I would have thought of using the £50,000 to start slowly and to build as you go along. But these are the rooms that you're playing around in when you've got a good mentor around you.
Yeah, and I know you play a very significant part. We'll come on to it later, perhaps, in terms of your own support for many communities and mentoring many individuals around you to follow in your footsteps, Levi. I'm going to move to you mentioned sort of mistakes earlier. Now, of course, hindsight is 2020, and every successful startup business will have to learn from its own mistakes before fully cementing itself. What were the lessons that you learned in developing and growing your business?
Well, I think marketing was a key one for me, finding that crucial market. That was a massive learning because I'm a Caribbean person, and originally I thought that great, I've got a Caribbean sauce. I live in Brixton. It's a fantastic hub of Caribbean people. Should be easy to sell my sauce within there. And that was my first mistake. It failed dramatically because I didn't bank on the fact that everyone is Caribbean. They make their own sauce. They know what Caribbean sauce. Why should they buy it from Levi Roots, who they know as a musician, as a singer? And so it absolutely failed, and I couldn't work it out. I nearly gave up, Sir Charles, and I absolutely thinking to myself, well, your owners rejected you for some reason or another, which in some ways was trying to teach me a lesson that I should go out and find my own market. And it's the realization of that, is that I had to get out from trying to sell Caribbean sauce to Caribbean people and find a market that didn't really know Caribbean food, that was willing to accept something new for them. And that's when I discovered the Shires. My kids and my friends went into the Shires that we said, any part of the country that had Shire at the end of it, that had some nice little country fates and country festivals, that's where I would end up in a couple of weeks and break through the market. And that's exactly what we did. So I think that was my greatest lesson, is about finding your niche market and be comfortable within that once you've discovered that. And yeah, I discovered the Shires, and that's where I met the producer for Dragon's Den, one of the type festivals that I used to do. I met the producer of Dragon's Den, and the rest is history.
Oh, well, that's lovely. And of course, the Reggae Reggae Sauce brand is a modern day, I'm going to call it a Cinderella story, starting, as you mentioned, in your kitchen. And
well, I do feel like Cinderella sometimes on a Friday night, Sir Charles. Come on. Don't bring those memories.
Very good, very good. But of course, it's now grown into, as you said, one of the UK's most recognisable brands, and it showcases the vibrancy of Jamaican culture and food right the way across the country, into the Shires, as you put it. But how do you see your brand developing and navigating perhaps some of the sort of complications of the competitiveness of a global markets, and itself further capitalizing on your own story, the Levi story that you articulated so well earlier?
For us, I do think it's about authenticity, for my brand in particular. It's got to be about remaining who you are and what the public perceive who you are. Because I do believe that people are not buying my product, like lots of other brands out there. People invest, even if they're paying £1.50 for a bottle of sauce. Every time they do that, because they go back time and time again, that is an investment. And when people are making that investment, they expect you to convey yourself and the product and the brand in a particular way that is acceptable to them. And if you can continue to do that, you will get the support. And that's the formula that I think all great brands have used. And I think I'm lucky enough, because of my appearance in Dragon's Den, to have accumulated a huge amount of customers, fans, or whatever you may call it, you may want to call the entity, that brought into the product. And I know what they've brought into. They've brought into the authenticity of that I'm able to bring them Caribbean food, as I said about the Shires, of finding my market where people didn't necessarily know Caribbean food. I think that's where the Levi Roots brand is lucky enough to be a mainstream brand. Whereas, people buy my books not necessarily because they know Caribbean, but because they don't know and they would like to know. It's a bit different from some other Caribbean brands that are sort of lesser down in the supermarket shelves, whereas it's more about their products and trying to get that across. But I think as long as I remain my own self, and I'm me that still says put some music in the food and picks my guitar up and sings and be freely me, I think that is how we navigate our way through. And it's an easy one, but it is a lesson out there for people who are thinking of going into business. I say to make the brand or the business about you. Again, that the investment is about you and how you portray yourself. I think that's a safer bet for how you retain customers.
Fantastic. And you mentioned that term authenticity, and you've done so already through this discussion, and perhaps we'll come through to it. It's very much a theme of the moment, and perhaps we will explore that a bit further. But between sort of Brexit and the impact of COVID-19, these are big things impacting us at this moment in time. How has your business adapted, and what do you see as the main sort of challenges and opportunities for business such as your own ahead, as we see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, well, we're lucky. I've always said we've married well when we've chosen partners. Our mother company is a company called Levi Roots, and they are one of the biggest companies here in and around the world that has taken on the license for Levi. As I said, that first order for Sainsbury's, weeks after Dragon's Den.
From the kitchen to them.
Absolutely. And when you're lucky enough to attract big business like that, as a small business yourself, it helps you to cushion, it helps to cushion any blows that may happen. And Brexit is a massive thing, but with the size of AB World Foods, one of the reasons why you choose these partners is that you will land well when any crash going on. So we rely upon them to be able to absorb any sort of problems when it comes to the stores, because we are a European source. We manufacture in Europe, in Poland. That's where AB World Foods main factory is from. So obviously it will affect, myself as well as other businesses, small businesses as well. We are the ones that will be feeling any fallouts that there is. Because the smaller we are and smaller down the line as we get, the bigger the impact is. For instance, I think one of the key things that's going to sort of block small businesses because of Brexit is red tape. Again, this is one thing that affects small businesses, is that time is your most important thing. Whereas bigger companies can absorb time and be able to get you. But when you're small, and especially for people that are just sort of setting up their business, those red tapes are going to be crucial to you. And people are going to face a lot of that.
Understood. Very, very, very much understood. Changing the subject a little bit, and we talked earlier about community, but alongside music and reggae, you are heavily involved in community, philanthropy and charity more widely. Perhaps, if you would, tell us a little bit more about that side, and what community or charity engagement are you perhaps most proud to be part of?
Yeah, I must admit, it has taken over my life a bit doing the stuff that I do love, but it demands it again, because that's the part of what you open yourself for when you become a brand that people, as I said, are invested in because of your integrity. And a lot of the projects that I do get involved with are ones that's very close to my heart. That pulls my heartstrings, and I feel like I'm not doing it because I've been asked. I'm doing it because I'm in that position, and I love to do it. So I get to be engaged in it. As I said, you put yourself up there, and you've got to accept that. So for me, it's just absolutely enjoying the stories that you get out of it and the way that you feel. But at the end of the day, it's still about people that are invested in yourself. So it goes hand in hand. So even though, as I said, it's a lot of it has taken over my life, but it is something that I enjoy.
Fantastic. And again, I mean, like 2020 has been a complex year. We've had the pandemic, but we also saw the global mobilization of Black Lives Matter. Can I ask, how has that impacted you, and what's your reflections therefrom?
I think Black Lives Matter is what came about and opened all our eyes up. I don't think in particularly for people of color, because to the situation, people of color's eyes have always been open. So I think, because there's an old saying that who feels it knows it. It's a very old Rastaman saying that if you've never felt it, then you don't really know. And there's got to be some kind of event or some kind of great awakening of yourself for you to realize these factors like racism. And if you've never faced it, like a lot of people around the world, some type of event is going to come around, so you really do get it. That's something. And I think the George Floyd situation and the Black Lives Matter that ensued after that was that awakening for non-people of color to have some understanding of what, you know, people were felt, because the George Floyd thing was in everyone's front room. You know, we all shocked and amazed and even like I said, for non-blacks, it was for people of that awakening that, you know, what the hell is happening? So it was really an important time in life for Black people just to be vindictive, if I can use that word for finding a better word, that it was out there. That knee was on people's neck, was on our necks, you know, at all times that we've been trying to say, but the metaphor perhaps was never explained properly. But now here it was. But I think in the end, Black Lives Matter became a sort of victim of its own popularity, because when you have something that's rushed so quickly because of events and what it is, it's bound to drag along with it as well to unexplained bit that people don't really understand what it meant, and the bit about defund the police, I think all that kind of stuff wasn't good for the movement. But I think that was all due to the success of it, and you know, it is expected in some kind of way that it wasn't all going to be right. So to answer your question, it affected me, yes, as a Black person. Obviously, you know, for me, it was the effectiveness is like a God, something has happened. People can see, because then afterwards you see, even though it was for a moment, but all of our TVs and all of our films and advertisement and everything, everyone was Black all of a sudden. It was evened up for a little while, you know, very short window of time as though it was. But for a while, it felt like, oh, God, this is a breath of fresh air. Even when you look around you and the things that represents the world that comes through your screens, it feels evened up in some kind of way. So that's what we're hoping for, that some kind of balance comes back into it in some way. That's a big wish. But it did what it's supposed to do, is open up other people's eyes.
Yeah. And I think we can reflect on it too, but the impact that it will have had on the younger generations too. You will probably have a perspective and view.
Yeah.
And actually, if I may, that draws me perhaps into a sort of a semi-final question, if I can put it that way. But, you know, we've mentioned that these incredibly challenging times in which we're all living, and arguably those most effective in these times are that younger generation. And I know, Levi, you've got, by way of example, a young son of 8 years old. I'm keen to understand, what advice would you give to them, and would you give to him?
Wow. Based upon my own realization, it is about timing, you know, how short time is. I wish somebody had explained to me when I was growing up how I'm trying to explain it to my son, you know, that you don't really have long on this earth. And the younger you are, is the less irrelevant you think of time. And nobody really grabs you and explains times to you. You can explain everything else, but you expect to work that out yourself as you go along. You get a beard as you go along, and you get older. You know, but I wish somebody had explained to me about how important it is to see that you don't have long to achieve, you know, things that you want to achieve. So that's what I would kind of tell my own self, which is what I'm trying to explain to Christopher, my son as well, that you don't languish your time. Because for a child like myself, coming from my background, there's always that scenario that said that you have to work twice as hard as everyone else. Because as I said, it took me until I was 48 before I was discovered in Dragon's Den and became a massive success with a multi-million-pound business just weeks and months after that. That doesn't sound like somebody has been plucked out of somewhere that has no sense of what business. Yeah. You have it there. But as I said, no one comes around to where you were to say, look, I spot you when you were young and I can help you to get to where you are. That's what's needed for younger minds now, that it doesn't take them as long as myself to be able to reach to the best of themselves.
Very good, very good. And my sort of final question, if I may, we mentioned we hope that we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. What is it that you are looking forward to? What is it that you will be promoting to your family and your communities as we near the end of that tunnel?
I think it's just to reflect back on life. I think COVID has made that so important. As how it's important that we take care of the important things. Again, just going back to my answer just before about that, we don't have long and we don't know where we are. I mean, I've lost my mom, and 3 months later, I lost my brother. In between that, you never know, where it's going. And when it comes as a shock, you can never be prepared for it. Yeah. But as I think, for where we are with COVID now, and our life has changed and everything has become even shorter, I think it's a massive thing that we use this time to reflect on what's been happening and try to evaluate, our lives over the past year, because that's such a big and strange thing, and nobody has really evaluated that yet because we're still in it. And it's getting worse as we go along. So as soon as we get the time, I think that's what all of us should do is have that time to reflect on our lives and maybe to plan going forward for similar effects like this.
Very good. And a single final word of advice for those people who are setting up their own businesses, who are following in your footsteps, becoming entrepreneurs, what would that be?
It would be about planning ahead. Is getting nothing's. You can never get investment without a business plan, because it starts there. You're going to have everything down on paper. I mean, even if you're not quite sure of what you want to do or how you want to take your business forward, write everything down. And even for mistakes, I've always said that there's no such thing as mistakes. Write it down. Mistakes becomes feedback, so you can always go back to it and learn from that. So do all you can, but keep a look, keep your business plan intact, because and the good thing about a business plan also, because it has to have a beginning and an end. If you're feeling ever bad about yourself or about the business, just forward to the end and have a look at the end of the business plan. When you've got the money and it looks so fantastic and your business is growing, it's bound to give you some motivation to carry you through those early days.
And I'm going to guess you would also give the advice that put your own personal brand into it too.
That is absolute key, because the investment is not in the product, especially if you're getting an investor to invest in. He will always want to make sure that whoever is selling the business will protect his investment. And that's not the product. It is about who is in charge. So that's where the investment is going to go, to the person.
To the person and the personal brand. Well, I love that. And that, I think, is a really very positive message on which to end. Again, full of hope and optimism. Levi, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining me and us today. I have thoroughly enjoyed meeting with you and so enjoyed hearing your story of Reggae Reggae and much more. Many congratulations on all you've achieved. I mean, I, for one, certainly as the barbecue season resumes, I will be amongst the very many, I'm sure, that will be putting a new bottle of Reggae Reggae on the kitchen table and keeping a few spare bottles in the pantry at the same time.
Yeah.
So we wish you all the very, very best of luck ahead, and of course for the business and for Reggae Reggae Sauce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Charles. One love, respect. Yeah. Respect to Mr. Hedwin.
One quick question, if I may.
Yes. Let me know.
I do see your guitar on your side.
Oh,
tell us a little bit more, and are you able to play us one little bit of a chord or two?
Definitely. Somebody put some music in the food for me. Give me some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I have to name it twice. I call it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce.
Brilliant. What a lovely way to finish. Thank you very, very much, Levi, and we much look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you.
Well, we've enjoyed another wonderful and inspiring discussion today with a great entrepreneur of our time. And as the barbecue season approaches, I, for one, will certainly be stocking up our pantry at home with a bottle or three of Reggae Reggae Sauce. Stay tuned for more conversations, great discussions, and inspirational guests. That's all for me, other than to say, stay safe and well, and bye for now.